Today's video is going to break down entity SEO. So the questions that you might have are, what is entity SEO? Does it actually work? Well, I have some good news for you. It's actually far easier than most people assume, and entity SEO does actually work. However, you got to know what types of websites and keywords that you want to target, and then from there, it gets a heck of a lot easier. Let's get into it in today's video. A big reason for why entity SEO gets awfully confusing and why many people fail to really embrace it is that they often try to apply it to the wrong types of businesses or the wrong types of websites. So, in particular, publishers or those that are focusing on blogs in general should probably avoid anything related to entity SEO. And that's a little bit convoluted. However, it gets too far into what people consider to be topical authority. Now, let me just break this down for you. Topical authority is the concept that content silos in clusters will give you more authority for your domain. And while there is some overlap here with entity SEO, you'll see further down in this video the differences. So, who is entity SEO best for? It's best for local service providers, directories, people who are using locations as part of their SEO strategy, and maybe even some around B2B SEO or B2B businesses. Let's talk about why this works for a moment and what Google's trying to do. So, if you think about it, maybe 10 years ago, Google had not enough websites to serve every single search term that was coming through Google. There just wasn't enough pages, there wasn't enough websites to serve all of it. And so they had to create relevance systems to be able to figure out how to match particular keywords to particular pages. Today, things are very different. They have far too many pages for a particular keyword or search query. And so their focus, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, started to shift towards creating the best possible results for every single search term. So they spent a lot of money and they spent a lot of time making sure that the best and highest quality websites appeared at the top of the list, aka your rankings or your search results pages. The result of all this work on Google's behalf was what they released as being EEAT, or EAT in short. So, what does entity SEO play into when it comes to these abbreviations? Well, it plays into the authority component of EEAT. So, domain authority, which is not really measured by backlinks any longer, it's measured by the number of pages in cumulative score that's on your domain as a whole. But before we get into that, I think we need to understand the concept of what Google is trying to do with these systems. So, let's say, for example, I asked two people on the street. I asked one person, I said, "Hey, do you know what types of insects and animals would consider to be annoying inside of a home?" And let's say it was in the Midwest. Let's say I was in Chicago. And one person on the left listed out, "Sure, I know." And they say ants, they say spiders, and they might say mice. And the person on the right lists ants, spiders, mice, and cockroaches, and the list goes on. Which one of those people do you think would be more of an expert on the subject of pests and home pest control? Well, I would think the second person who had a larger knowledge of what type of pests may be considered to be annoying. But a question that you might have is, how does Google do this? They really can't read pages very well, so how do they know? Okay, so it's pretty simple. What they do is they look at two things that you give to Google. You give it a sitemap, which has a number of pages that exist on your website, and they look at the density of keywords across multiple pages. So, when we're thinking about entity SEO, one thing that we have to identify right early on is that we should never try to stuff all of these keywords onto one single page and try to show that we have authority around a particular subject. Instead, what we should do is we should spread it out and make sure that we reference the things that we understand and that Google's systems understand are connected and related. So think of this as a scoring system where a score is lower, meaning it's greater and it's good for things that have relationships to one another. like pests in the home and cockroaches. And things that are further away from each other have a higher score. So things like, let's say you have a pest control website and you start talking about real estate on your blog. These are two things that are very far from one another and probably not going to help. So, if you are one of those websites that has pest control as your primary focus for your business, and you have a blog that has very irrelevant things on them, yes, it's probably due time for you to remove those because they are just simply not helping you. So think about it as this: the number of pages that you have, the connected relationship between those pages and those things that Google's systems also know, and the overall number of pages that you have being highly related to your core topic or your core subject matter as being your authority density. Okay, well, let's do a deep dive and give you a great example. So, I've found a wonderful site here. Fantastic job. Domain rating of only 14. Not too many referring domains. Like I mentioned, link building here really isn't that important. And they're growing like gangbusters. So, I've put into Google pest control Manhattan, which, as you could assume, in New York is a pretty competitive keyword. And we see Broadway exterminating that same website here at the top of the list. In fact, they're over websites like Yelp and This Old House and more. So, how did they do it? Well, let's click through and take a look. As we scroll down to the page, we see these wonderful links to internal pages: rats and mice, cockroaches, bed bugs, cloth moths, fleas, odor control, things like that, right? Now, this is wonderfully done because this internal linking and this nature of the fact that the sitemap and the internal links are all going to represent a connected nature of the subject matter, which is essentially pest control, it creates that entity SEO relationship. And no, this is not topical authority. In later videos, I will explain to you why. But as we can see from the drop down menu at the top, this global navigation, they also link a number of their service pages, which speak to their authority. They have commercial opportunities as well. And they even do this for locations. So if we go into locations and we scroll down, we can see Bronx, Brooklyn, Hunts Point, Fordham Heights, Queens, and more. So all of these pages, while they don't have direct keywords that they are targeting with them, they are all playing a role together in creating authority for the overall domain, meaning that the pages that they are targeting for particular keywords, like on the homepage, that is, if we go back to the homepage, we can see Manhattan is the target keyword. It helps to build all of the potential opportunities across all of the potential pages. And so, why is this really key? Because technically, in older SEO land or older SEO methods, people would think one keyword and one page. Now you kind of have to think a little bit multidimensionally. You have to make sure that you have really good service pages, really good location pages, especially if you're a pest control company, and making sure that they're connected in a way that makes sense for visitors and makes sense for Google's crawlers. What do I mean by that? Well, they're not stuffing these pages full of keywords. They're trying to make them helpful and useful. As an example, they could just talk about the history of Manhattan on this page, but they're not doing that. They're talking about why there might be a pest control problem in Manhattan, and that's very useful for the end visitor. So let's say you're building a pest control website and you want to know, well, what service pages should I create that align to the entities that Google understands? Well, funny enough, Google itself is actually your best tool for this. So if we put into Google what pests are usually in the home, what we can find is a list right here of all the entities. So, funny enough, this tells us that Google understands the subject matter, which is why we want to make sure that we have individual service pages that are all focused on these insects and rodents that might be in the house. So you might want to create a service page for cockroaches, termites, fleas, flies, spiders, ants, bed bugs, and really anything that would apply for that service provider that you're trying to build a website for. So let's just see if this works for other types of services too. So I'm going to say, maybe I'm building a plumber website. And I'll say, what types of common plumbing issues happen in the home? Interesting. Here we go. Common types of plumbing problems: leaky pipes, running toilets, clogged toilets, faucet repair, slow drains. These are all wonderful ideas. So, if I was building a service provider website that was for plumbers, like a local plumber, I would want to make sure that I had service pages that were all designed for these types of problems. And I would not want to keyword stuff those pages. What I would want to do is just create very helpful pages that don't target particular keywords, but are interlinked towards the homepage. And my homepage is probably where I'm going to be targeting my really lucrative keywords, like my near me terms or things like that. Okay, so I gave you a really easy example with service providers because asking questions like what pests are in the home and what plumbing problems you might have are pretty clear to be able to see what service pages that you might be able to make. So let's do something for B2B SEO. Let's say something like common inventory management problems. So if I'm a inventory management software solution as an example, I can scroll through here and I can start to see some engrams, they're called. So basically just some keywords. So what I might have inside of my B2B website are service pages that speak to automation. That seems like a great one. Forecasting, that also seems like a great one. So, inventory tracking is probably going to be a great one. We all know that's probably going to be pretty clear. Warehouse organization, order management, overstocking, these all seem like great opportunities for me to be able to create individual service pages that speak to features for my SaaS product that all address common problems that an inventory manager might have. So, as a result, as you can see here, these individual pages all working together to address those questions, elevate the expertise that I'm displaying as a byproduct, elevating the overall authority for the domain around that specific subject matter. And that's your entity SEO at play. How does entity SEO work when it comes to locations or service locations? Well, it's very similar to what we just saw when it came to describing the types of services that you may want to put on your website as well. So, let's look at this one: plumbing services in San Francisco. When you use tools like Ahrefs, unfortunately for entity SEO, it's not really going to work the best. It's not going to give you the best insights, but for the illustration of this video, I'm going to show you a couple. So I put in plumbing services San Francisco, and if we scroll, we can actually see that the top result only has a domain rating of 13. Pretty interesting, right? It's even over some that have domain ratings of 72, and it's definitely over Yelp. Kind of awesome, right? Well, if we look at that same result, they do entity SEO really well. They have their residential services here: toilets, faucets, sinks, sewers, and drains. All these individual pages that are speaking to their services, like we just covered. So fantastic. But what did they also do? They leaned into locations too. So as we scroll down, what we can see is that they talk about different neighborhoods in San Francisco that they service. Now, they put this on their homepage, which I definitely would not recommend doing. What I would recommend doing is creating individual service location pages and maybe talking about cities rather than neighborhoods. However, this can still work too if you include some neighborhoods that you service. So as we scroll down, you can see Central Richmond, Inner Richmond, Sunset, Outer Sunset, Inner Sunset, Ingleside Heights, Lakeshore, all these different neighborhoods. And that's tapping into those entities Google knows are a part of San Francisco. So it's having the same net effect. Remember, you don't want to stuff all these keywords or entities on your homepage. You don't want to do that. That's going to flag you for unhelpful content. What you want to do is you want to put it on individual service pages. You want to make sure that those are really well designed to what problems that people have in those areas. And you want to avoid just talking about those cities, like adding in fluff content. That's just not going to work at all. Okay, maybe you're getting the picture now of how this all works. Let's just do a simple checklist so you know exactly what to do. Step one, you're going to want to make sure that you put together an idea map of all the different service pages, location pages, or maybe if you're building a B2B SaaS company, as an example, you're going to want to create ICP pages. So, service page by use case, highlighting how your software by use case works. And you're going to want to map this out. This will give you an idea of what pages to create and how you're going to link them together in your top level navigation or through internal linking throughout the entire site. You want to create some connectivity to them. The best way to do this is usually through the global footer navigation and the top level navigation. Once you have that map, then you can start creating pages. Make sure, step two, that you start creating pages that are really well designed to your target audience, not just your target keyword. You want to go after zero search volume keywords here and really show your authority back to Google. Make sure that you don't have any fluff content on these sites or on these pages, and really make sure that they're designed for humans. That's going to be key. And then on those pages, ensure that you are referencing those entities that we called out. So, again, if you're a plumber and you're talking about faucets, then you're going to want to make sure that you really talk about faucets on that page and what you do to fix faucets. That would be common problems faucets have, what you would do to fix them, and more. If you're a B2B SaaS company, as an example, what you might want to be talking about is how you solve particular use cases. So, if you're an attorney software, you might be speaking about how your software helps with leads or with intake or with case management or things like that. Okay, now step three, now that you have all the content designed, really make sure that you're submitting this to Google. So make sure that all these pages are now in your sitemap, and then just give it some time. You're going to have to give it at least 3 months before you experience any type of increase in search visibility, because a lot of these keywords that we're talking about usually have very low monthly search volume, and Google just doesn't update them very quickly. All right, so if you made it to the end of the video, you know that I do my typical things here. And that typical thing is to like, subscribe, and to leave a comment, please, because it definitely helps the YouTube channel. But also that I offer SEO services and I have a 90% hit rate in terms of helping my clients grow their businesses. That's usually by following and tracking particular business KPIs that they care about, trial signups if you're in B2B SaaS, or if you're in plumbing or some type of local services, it's about lead gen or getting more calls, things like that. But I do have a 90% hit rate, and that's just because, well, I know how search works, and the game has changed. You can do all of this yourself. You don't have to have me do it for you, but some people are, in need of a little bit of help if they're trying to run their business. So feel free to reach out to me if you want me to do all this for you, and I'm happy to do that. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. Love you, community, and have a good week.